In this Gold Belt video, I will show how to test a background service application in C#. I have the solution open here. This particular implementation is using the IHostedService. There's kind of two main frameworks in .NET for hosting rich client background services. And IHostedService is one of them. The other is using the more traditional service manager. But both of those will host a background service. So in this particular case, if we look at our code, the Program.cs file is using this host class, so Microsoft.extensions.hosting.host. And then our main worker class is deriving from background service, which is also a Microsoft extensions.hosting object here. So we need to be able to test this thing. So we'll start off as we typically do. I'll create a test project. And I'll just use, let's see, I haven't used NUnit in a while, so we'll use NUnit. All right, we've got that up and running. These are loading transactions, so I'll call it transaction loading tests. All right, let's change a couple of things really fast. I'll make the workspace, the assembly, the root namespace match the same as what's going on with the worker service project. So we'll just copy these over. Disable nullable. Root namespace. And I'll make the root namespace the transaction loader rather than the worker service itself. And then the assembly name, we'll just change this to acceptance tests. That looks good. We'll close those out, and then we'll go ahead and fix our namespace to make it match. There we go. We're not going to need a setup. And let's go ahead and create our just example test method. This is, again, our goal is to just get this enough to where we can actually run the program. We are going to expect it to fail when it connects to either a file or a database or a web service, something like that. But for now, we can use this to basically make sure that we're connecting correctly and actually running the program. So I've got this. I do also need to set up a project reference. So we'll add a reference to worker service because we're going to need to invoke these classes. Now there's a couple of ways that we can do this. I'm going to show you both of those two different ways. So the first way is we basically take what's in the Program.cs file here and we basically just do this. So let me copy this code over as is. We'll see if we can get this working. And I'll say this is option 1 and I'll keep it here. We'll just comment it out when we're done. All right, so it needs args. We're not really going to pass args, so I'm going to leave that as just an empty string array. So just an empty array that's being passed in. Add hosted service needs a using, so we'll just add our using here. And now it looks like everything is up and running. So let's go ahead and verify this. Let's test it out and see if we have success. I'm hoping that I get some sort of problem connecting to a resource rather than some other error happening when we run this. All right, so it is running. So one of the things that I am going to need to do here, because it's not stopping, is I need to make this thing stop. So what we'll do is we'll also now say stop async. And we can do some work in between here. So if we wanted to wait for a period of time, I could do a thread sleep. I could wait for a particular resource to happen. So I can monitor a database, poll that, see if that happens. There's a few things we can do, but we'll just stop this for now. And I could turn this into a wait. I'm not a big fan of a wait, so we'll just do getAwaiter.getResult. So this will force it to stop. And again, afterwards, I could do some additional work. So here I could do some work for the test. And then here I could do more work for the test. So those are available to me. But basically, this is the setup, just like Program.cs would happen when it runs. This would basically stop the service and make sure that everything is finished up. And now I can do any assertions either before or after the stop. So let's test this now. Comma. There we go. All right, so we finally got our connection timeout issue, which is exceptional. That's actually good. What this means is we have gotten to the actual code where we're trying to load to the database. We're trying to connect to the database. So this is great. I'm now ready to get the test to run, move on towards the database connectivity, which is a separate video. I'm not going to cover that here. So we're in good shape. We're actually able to run the service and get to a SQL exception as a part of our code. So excellent running there. So that's one option, is to use this code exactly as it is from the program.cs file. The other option is to call into the worker class, whatever that background service is, directly. In this way, I don't have to worry about, in case the program.cs file, let me open this back up. This is fairly small, but there may be a lot of configuration code here, and you may not want all of that code inside your test. If that's the case, let's look and see how we can do just the simple background service class. So that's our worker object. What we need to do is we need to create one of these worker objects, but we'll notice the constructor takes an iLogger of worker. So it's going to need a logger object, and that logger is used. So we can't just pass null. If we pass null, it would blow up. So we need to be able to create one of these and run that. So here's option 2. Option 2, we need to start with a logger. So let's create our logger. And I'm going to go to the logger factory class. This is in Microsoft's extensions. So we'll say logger factory create and give it a builder. So this is an action. So let's take a look at this. This is an action of iLogging builder. So an action is a method that takes an argument but does not return anything. So this is a void. So in other words, it's a method that takes an iLogging builder. So we'll say builder for our Lambda, and then we'll just do, I don't really need to do anything. And then we'll say create logger. I'm going to create a logger for my worker class. So it kind of looks funny, but this is part of the dependency injection framework that Microsoft released. This is how you can basically create one of these manually if you didn't want to use DI. I'm not a huge fan of DI. I think it can be useful in certain cases, but I think it gets way overused. All right, so now let's see if we can create our worker with our logger. And now we'll say start async. It needs a cancellation token. And so we will pass cancellation token.none because we don't really need to actually do any kind of cancellation. That would be for a separate framework. We're not really doing that with our test here. So that's going to start it up. And again, I could do some work here while it's running. And then to stop it, we'll simply call stop async. And again, cancellation token.none. Get waiter.getResult. And I can do additional work here. So here I could do any kind of assertions or wait for things to happen with the database. Here, same thing, I could do more assertions or my assertions at all, and then connect to the resources and make sure everything works. So let's go ahead and run this and see if we have a success. We should get the same SQL connection error. Let's see what happens here. Took 20 seconds last time, so we'll see if it takes about that same time here. There we go. Same error, almost 20 seconds as well. It was slightly faster, although after 19 seconds, I don't know that 0.1 seconds makes a huge difference, but we do get the same error, so we are able to run this exactly the same way. Either case, whether you use option 1 or option 2, doesn't really matter for .NET. Once you get that up and running, you're ready to, in our case, get the database connectivity working.